When it comes to the New York City criminal justice system, a lot of changes are needed to be made. This said by many people. But here now to discuss the reality of those issues, we welcome now the President and Chief Executive Officer of the New York Women's Foundation, Ana Oliveira. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
So let's talk about this here, because as we talk about the criminal justice system in New York, obviously a lot of problems. We talk about in the borough of the Bronx, you have a long wait just to get to court. You've got incarceration issues, and the list can go on. But talk about your work and the work that you guys are doing right now.
Absolutely. So in 2016, the City Council Speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, created a commission to look exactly at that, at what's happening in the criminal system in our city. And the commission comprised of 27 members, including individuals who have been priorly incarcerated at Rikers, did an incredible amount of due diligence and study and conversations, heard from all parties that are touched by any interaction with the criminal system, from folks that have been arrested, have done time, from judges, DAs, from families, from correction officers themselves. So we had an opportunity to do a very deep dive on what's actually happening. And what we found out is that although over 20 years in New York City, incarceration rates have been going down, crime has also been going down. And most of us don't know that. Most of us think that our crime is down because we incarcerate more.
But incarceration rates are down?
Yes.
Okay.
So then we went to see, so what's happening? Our local jail, which is Rikers Island, has actually 9 facilities inside it, and almost 3/4 of the persons that are today at Rikers Island have not been convicted of a crime. So we are failing at a basic tenet of our democracy, of our justice system, which is presumed innocent until found guilty. We have so many people, out of 9,700 people, about 3/4 are in the processing of their cases, largely because they can't make bail.
Low-level offenses or high offenses?
Both types.
Okay.
And even how indictments happen, how the categorization of offenses happens, is something that we looked at, and we are looking into it. So Rikers Island incarceration has become the one response. We have had, as we know, the closing of mental health facilities years ago, decades ago. A very high percent of individuals at Rikers Island have been homeless, have mental health issues. Rikers Island became the response of kind of warehousing human beings in a very non-productive way, very costly, almost $250,000 a year per bed at Rikers Island. So the commission saw that, the violence, the isolation of Rikers Island is not good. It's not good for families. It takes a whole day to visit somebody for a loved one. Correction officers told us that many times they don't even go home because of the distance of Rikers Island between shifts, and are sleeping in their cars.
And we've heard the words about closing Rikers Island. We know the mayor has actually spoke about closing Rikers Island and putting forth a proposal. Given the fact that Rikers Island is so stretched, let me go to the possibility, the option on the table about putting public jails, in the city. They talked about having more jails in the city as opposed to just having Rikers Island. From your perspective, good idea, bad idea, what are we hearing?
So one of the recommendations of the commission is that we do localized smaller jails with high quality services, easy accessible to families, easy accessible to the court system. Really important that jails and the court be so close together, because that's where the action is happening. That folks who are incarcerated don't have to be transported, spend hours. It creates an enormous backlog of cases. The matching of transportation from Rikers to arriving, let's say, in the Bronx court, or in Queens, or in Manhattan, or in Staten Island, or in Brooklyn. So one of the recommendations is to study and see that, for instance, in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn House Detention has been refurbished, is located near the courts in Brooklyn, has not prevented any economic development. In fact, that area of Brooklyn is booming with economic development. At the end, the location of jails is really a matter for City Council. But the Commission has recommended humane jails, modern jails, easily accessible, high-level services, preparing individuals for returning to community.
In favor of closing Rikers Island?
We think it's a smart, a fair thing to do, a just thing to do. Will transform the city into really good use of dollars. You know, the other thing we're not saying is that the idea of keeping people incarcerated for, you know, weeks and months because they can't afford bail has other consequences that we're also dealing with. You know, people lose their jobs, people lose their homes, women lose, you know, custody of their children. It's a disorganizing factor in the lives of communities and families that are already so fragile. So we want the city to be a model, not just to itself, but to the country, that we can use incarceration sparsely when individuals are a threat to others or to themselves, but that we can also build support for individuals to thrive and to have a second chance.
Well, originally what incarceration was supposed to be was, we heard the word rehabilitation back before, and it seems as though it's not rehabilitation anymore. It's strictly about punishment, punitive actions, and incarceration rather than rehabilitation. Are we going back to, or is there a plan and method about doing this rehabilitation? I mean, we got a huge problem on Rikers Island, and you know, a lot of people are really worried about this because it really seems like it's more about incarceration and not rehabilitation.
Yes. So we're very happy, as you mentioned, that the mayor is supportive. The mayor has put out a plan to do that. He's investing $30 million in the current budget to make this transformation happen, so that the transformation includes community voices, includes the understanding that these are our families, these are our individuals, and that we will do better by investing in those lives. New York City has a vast array of services, community-based organizations working with reentry, working with services while people are incarcerated. We also want to work on prevention. We want to work at the onset. So when people get arrested, what else is needed there? Do we actually need to incarcerate? Do we need other interventions to stabilize them, to maintain them, operating in their lives more beneficially right there? We want to embrace people with support at the moment of crisis. And incarceration is a moment of super crisis. An arrest is already a moment of crisis. Let's use that to create an opportunity for support and see if we can strengthen families, strengthen our communities, and actually use the institutional incarceration to help individuals to come back to their families and to their communities in a better way than when they went in.
I want to go back to Rikers Island because, of course, we know a lot of people who've been connected and are dealing with the Rikers Island situation. Had a gentleman on not too long ago, and I guess his organization was in charge of an organization that helps people to pay bail. They help to pay bail for those persons who actually cannot make bail on Rikers Island, given the fact that most people on Rikers Island are just that. They just can't afford to really pay bail. Is there anything being done by way of making some sort of modification for bail to really help those people who we presume are innocent until proven guilty, but really look guilty until proven innocent?
That's right. So, for instance, in the Bronx, there are two very good bail funds: the Bronx Freedom Fund and the Bronx Community Bail Fund. They're very good. They have, let's say, I think in their years of operation, being able to bail out 2,000 individuals. But that is a drop in the bucket in the whole system. A bail system has an unintended consequence of punishing the poor twice, right? Being poor and then being poor and staying incarcerated because of being poor. We, for instance, look at the system in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has a system without bail, except it's very rarely cash bail, very rarely used. And it has the same rates of appearance to court, of return to court, than cash bail systems like New York City. So yes, one of the recommendations of the commission is looking at no cash bail for New York City.
So where do we see where do we find out more about the report of the commission? And where does it go from here now that you've done your report?
Yes, so the report is easily accessible in the website. The commission announced it in April in a press release, and we are, like today, each of us in our own capacities, members of the commission, really reaching out so that we can have New Yorkers understand, have more information. Even though it was such an incredible learning experience and a witnessing of transformation of individuals. And by the way, all of our families are touched by the criminal system. And we want to, I'm going to say, highlight the word justice in the criminal justice system. So information is available. We are always available to come and talk in community conversations. We have done a lot of those. We have done that with the clergy and other members of our communities that are very much, on the ground and know what it means to be able to support individuals when they get in trouble.
Well, certainly we want to bring you back, and then you can come on back and share a little bit more with us and about the commission. Great work that's being done, and it's great to hear all the great things that are happening. Thank you, Ana Oliveira.
Thank you
so much for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you.
All righty, listen, we need you to stay tuned. We got more show coming up after this. Coming right back.